Okay, good evening. Hello, welcome to tonight's shir. So the first shir is going to be the halachos, the summary of the halachos of the 9 days. Today was Rosh Chodesh, and therefore it's a good opportunity just to review some of the halachos that start today and that will preoccupy us over the next 9 days until after Tisha B'Av. So there are 4 areas really in the 9 days that we're going to be thinking about. Number 1 is building and decorating, that sort of thing. Next is meat and wine, and then laundry, and then washing and bathing. So in terms of building and decorating, this is just an overview, and this is, I'm just taken from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The Kitzur says in Siman Chof Beis, Siv Zayin, Mishenichnes Av Mematan B'Simcha, quoting the Mishnah in Tanis, and then Ein Boinin Binyan Shel Simcha. You can't build a binyan shel simcha. However, the poskim explain that construction for basic dwelling, an extension of your house, or if there's an overcrowded home, that would be permitted. But what we're talking about really is sort of swimming pools, holiday homes. Those sort of things cannot be built during the 9 days.
So decorating you can?
So, and when it comes to decorating, I've got it there. If you look at note 142, if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com and I'll send you the handout. On source 142, I quote Rabbi Moshe. The Igros Moshe says that if you began wallpapering, decorating before the 9 days, you continue until Shabbos Chazoin. So therefore, if you began, I don't know, like last Sunday, then this year, Shabbos Chazoin is in 3 days' time. And therefore, you're allowed to continue, even though Rosh Chodesh was Wednesday, you can continue Thursday, Friday, if you began beforehand. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, the Kitzur carries on and says, if you did fix a price with a non-Jewish person to decorate your home, if you can give him a little bit of extra money, then it's appropriate to do that. If you can, to push him off till after the 9 days, then that's appropriate. And then, of course, the Kitzur says, if you have a court case with a non-Jewish person, if you can, you should try and push that off because our luck is down during this time. Okay, and he says, how long for? Yishtamit, if you can, really the whole month, or at least until after Tisha B'Av. Okay, now, what is the story with regard to meat and wine during the 9 days? So the Kitzur says here in Sivches in the second box, Minig b'chol Yisrael shelo lechol basov shelo yishtos yain b'tisha yom shemin Rosh Chodesh ad la'achar Tisha B'Av. So that's one of the key halachas, that there's no meat or wine during the 9 days. V'asa afilu b'tavshish nisbashel b'basar. Now that means even a dish, for example, a chulant. Let's say it's Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, if a person, there's now a new minhag, I think in America it's very common, called Toya Meha. You familiar with it? Toya Meha is like this big kiddush on Erev Shabbos. Toya Meha is come, Toya Meha Chaim Zochu, if you have a taste. That's the key word, the taste of Shabbos. I remember I once had the zuchus of being in Chaim Kanievsky's home many years ago, and I was in yeshiva. I went to buy this for him, and of his father's farm in Kiryas Yaakov. And in those days you could just walk in and out. And it was Erev Shabbos, and it was just Reb Chaim and the Rebbetzin. And I walked in, and me, and I remember the Rebbetzin had called him over because she wanted him to be Mekayim mitzvah Toya Meha. So came into the kitchen, he sort of walked into the kitchen, had a little spoon of chulant. That's the point, a little spoon of chulant, right? But these Toya Meha Kedeshim, it's a very strange thing. I mean, one should go into Shabbos with an appetite. Anyway, but that's a digression. So let's say, this year, 9 days, you cannot have your Toya Meha Erev Shabbos of all fleishik thing, of meaty things. And so too Motzei Shabbos, leftovers on Shabbos cannot, serve for lunch on Sunday or Monday or however long they normally last. But the point is, Erev Shabbos, let's say you want your chulant and you can't get your chulant fixed in Erev Shabbos, so you may say to yourself, you know what, I'll leave the meat, but I'll take out the potatoes, the beans, whatever else, but I won't have the meat. That is not allowed. Because, as the Kitzur says, even a dish which has got meat in it, that therefore the whole thing becomes meaty. Now, of course, if a person, you are allowed to use a fleishik, a meaty pot, for a par of things. If it's a clean meaty pot, let's say it's and you want to cook some soup or something, or a par of soup, a vegetable soup or something, then you're allowed to have, that doesn't make you meaty, you're allowed to use a meaty pot, that's not a problem. The only restriction is not to have milk directly with it. So if you make an onion soup and it's heated up in a meaty pot, don't put grated cheese in your soup because if it's been made in a meaty pot. But it doesn't make you meaty just to have parv soup from a meaty pot. If a person is intolerant and he can't have milk and he's weak, then hakol mutter, there is definitely leeway for this. For example, in school today, for some reason they delivered some sandwiches for pupil premium children, and they go into this, in a discreet way, they get their sandwiches, and they were delivered some fleshik sandwiches. So it's not ideal at all, one shouldn't, but what happened, if they're kids who wouldn't have lunch, and there's no food at home, there's definitely leeway for allowing them to just eat them in that situation. Of course, told them tomorrow to provide non-meaty alternatives. Why they deliver that, I don't know. But there is leeway and these sort of things. Hakol mutter. If a woman needs something which is more nourishing and she needs some meat or something, then the Kitzur says you can go until Zayin Av, until the 7th of Av, because then the mourning intensifies. However, V'sudas mitzvah, the Kitzur carries on and says, then im gamkein mutarim b'basa v'yayin. You're allowed to have meat and wine if it was some form of Sudas mitzvah. So, for example, a bris, a pidyon haben, or classically a siyum. So, therefore, having a siyum in the 9 days is fine. One should avoid what some I've heard, I've never seen it, hasn't yet reached these shores, but there are some restaurants I understand which advertise we have a siyum every half an hour. Right, which is astonishing, really, and of course, that goes against the whole grain of the thing. The shaila is, a siyum, who can come to the siyum? How broad can your invitation list be? So Ramosha says, it's what the Kitzur says over here. He says, who can come? Apart from the immediate family, only those people who are shaykh to the mitzvah. So, for example, if it was your chavrusa and his family, or your talmidim or something like that, that would be okay. Now, what about a camp situation? What about if there was a siyum in camp and you've got a chada ochel, a dining room with a few hundred kids? How does that work? So Ramosha says that people who normally eat together with the one who completed the Masechta in camp, that is your dining room. Those are your friends for the next 2 weeks, or in America who have much longer. Then they can eat at the siyum. So making a siyum in a larger setting, if that is the normal scenario, those are people who normally eat together, that would be okay. Another pointer with regard to meat and wine is just to remind ourselves that on Motzei Shabbos, the restrictions kick in straight away, which causes a problem for Havdalah. So what happens with the wine for Havdalah? So he said, if you look at the last line, V'koshel Havdalah in the second box, V'koshel Havdalah b'Motzei Shabbos, and Yesh Tinek Sheyishte Rov HaKos, nice to know. If you've got a child who can drink Rov Kos, then that is preferred. V'im lav yochel Havdalah ba'atzma nishtes. Based on the Ramah says that if not, there's no one else around, which will be the case in many homes, then you can drink the wine or the grape juice or whatever you use on Motzei Shabbos. Okay, Adkan, meat and wine and building. Now, laundry. So
not to have wine, to have a different drink.
You don't have to do that. If you're the preference is to use wine. One doesn't have to start using beer and other things like that. You stick to wine, and the poskim, the Ramah says to drink wine if there's no child around. He doesn't say that you should have alternatives.
Is there an issue of restaurants serving meat during the 9 days?
So it's an interesting question. I had a former student who called me. She is she's more religious than her family, and they wanted to go out to a meaty restaurant. Now she can't, if she can persuade her family to have a par of milky alternative. My understanding is that many restaurants are open, and their rationale is when you go into these restaurants, there is fish alternatives and other alternatives. And the reason why they stay open is the people who would go there and would eat meat because they're not, particular about these halachas. If they were shut, they would go elsewhere to a treifa restaurant. So I understand that is their rationale for being open and serving meat. So I told the student, look, of course, when you go, you make sure that you have the non-meaty option. And if you can, gently encourage your family to do the same, then fine. But if they don't, then at least better they eat in a kosher restaurant. And in that is the svara of the Rav HaMachshir. Okay, laundry. V'chein ein mechapsin B'tisha Yom Eilu, you're not allowed to do laundry in the 9 days. Fa'afilu cholok beged she'ein reitzed lav shadach hatanis, you can't even wash things which you're not going to wear, and you'll just say, hey look, camp is in next week on holiday or whatever, and therefore I'll do the laundry during the 9 days, not to wear them. That's also not allowed. So you can't do laundry during the 9 days. That means that one has prepared a stock of shirts and things like that you're using beforehand. But other things which don't really require dry cleaning and things like that, socks, underwear, things like that, or t-shirts, that pajamas, they don't. You can take them straight from the drawers, and that's not a problem. And lastly, bathing. So in Sif Base, the bottom box, he says, "In reichtzin b'tisha yom elu." You're not allowed to take a shower, take a bath. Afilu b'tzoynein. Ach l'refuah kagun yoledes umberes, but for refuah purposes, it's allowed because washing is tovlo l'irchotz. V'chein odom cholosh, a weak person, shetzivos ha'aref l'irchotz, for a person has been told by the doctors to wash mutar l'irchotz, etc., etc. Now, this is important because if you look at 146. There are some sort of leniencies with regard to this. This refers to pleasure rechitza shel ta'anug. So really what is also is pleasure bathing, having a hot bubble bath or a very long hot shower, something like that. But certainly washing face, arms and legs with cold water is allowed. The Mishnah Berurah brings that, the Maramokkim is at the bottom. And Rabbi Moshe says that you can be lenient on it and wash if it's a hot day and a person is sticky and sweaty, then to remove sweat and stickiness, not just for pleasure, just to shower to remove the sweat and stickiness, that would be okay during the 9 days. So that's very important to note. Swimming, of course, is not allowed. I think we discussed it one time, maybe I forget if it was in this forum, but swimming, the problem with swimming is not because of sakana. If there are lifeguards there, it's a swimming pool, the issue is not sakana. One shouldn't do dangerous activities in the 3 weeks. And the issue with swimming is a problem of rechitza. It's considered rechitza shel ta'anug. It's akin to washing for pleasure, and that's not allowed. And therefore, swimming is not allowed in the 9 days, whereas it would be okay in the 3 weeks. And just regarding this Erev Shabbos, which is Erev Shabbos Chazoin, so again, Rav Moshe says that nowadays a person normally bathes in hot water every Erev Shabbos, and therefore you can do the same this Erev Shabbos without any restrictions. Say that. Any questions? Yeah.
What is this with the putting on shirts before the 9 days? Like some people, they tramp or they...
So really what one should do is one should put on shirts beforehand and prepare, like I said, a stock of shirts to wear during the 9 days. And you don't have to wear them for half an hour. That takes away the crispy freshness of it. If one forgot to do that, then you can trample on it or do some things like that. That is, and on Shabbos you can wear 2 or 3. On Friday night you wear one. On Shabbos morning you wear another one. You have a shluv, you wake up, you put another one. Those sort of tricks. Okay, Peseda.
I actually asked